So coming off of the previous chapter, Hikari's jackpot had ended, and once it did, Kashimo casted a lightning bolt from his stationary staff and had it run across the shipping yard all the way back to himself, but Hikari was right in its path, and this blew out like a portion of his stomach. And this seemingly was the end for Hikari, but since his jackpot was over, he was able to activate his domain expansion again. And that brings us to the beginning of this chapter, where Kashimo says he's making a desperate attempt to cast domain expansion, but all he'll get are faster spins, not increased probability. This is because the last jackpot that Hikari hit was an even number, triple sixes, so that means that he's going to go into faster spins mode, because he can only get increased probability by hitting an odd number jackpot. So instead of that, he just gets faster spins here, which just allow him to go through the game much faster than he normally would. So it's kind of compensating for the lack of increased probability that he would be getting otherwise, but it doesn't matter because he's instantly hitting the jackpot here. And the explanation is because it's an unexpected jackpot due to hidden probability. It's a pachinko mode that appears similar to faster spins but actually carries increased probability. A player can tell by looking at the segment display. So this is like a little bit of a cop-out from Gege, to be honest. I mean, the stakes were so high at the end of the chapter, especially coming into this one, and it's kind of just like, nah, it doesn't matter. He just hit the jackpot because I need him to survive this sequence. Especially because Gege established such an elaborate rule system for how Hikari's abilities work here. And it's kind of just like, nah, forget it. He just hit it instantly because hidden probability. I guess this could be similar to like when patchy slot players are able to manually hit the jackpot themselves, like by seeing when the symbols are going to come and they just hit them in sequential order. But maybe it's less of that and more just blind luck here, because it says, Hikari has truly incredible luck. So it's whatever. Hidden probability is like an ambiguous thing to a novice patchy slot player, to myself anyway, but it ultimately just doesn't matter. Gege needed a way for Hikari to survive here so that the fight can continue, and that's what we're getting. So Hikari once again has infinite cursed energy here, and he's regenerating from his fatal wound. Hey, also guys, if you like my Jujutsu Kaisen content, please subscribe if you haven't already. Fine if you don't want to, but if you just need a reminder, here you go. And then he says, thanks to a manga otaku, I've got manga brain now. He's referring to his previous opponent in Charles, and he asks Kashimo like if he likes manga, and Kashimo says no. And this is like interesting because like, does Kashimo even know what manga is? It's from 400 years ago. Then Hikari opens up his domain barrier and it releases Kashimo over the sea. He says, did he shift his barrier coordinates? So what I'm assuming is happening here is Hikari somehow physically moved his domain barrier from their original location on the shipping yard and moved it to like over the sea. Because usually when a sorcerer casts their domain expansion and it's not incomplete, it's usually represented as like a giant sphere. So I guess more advanced sorcerers can like literally move the location of the sphere itself so that when the domain expansion is over, they could be released to a different location, but with their opponent being none the wiser, which is what's happening here. And this is obviously smart because of the electrical properties of Kashimo's cursed energy, because he says, so once it starts discharging in water, it won't stop until it's depleted. I can release my cursed energy until it's gone, or I can shut it off until I return to land. But conveniently for, I guess, both of them, the sea is infested with cursed spirits. And this is of course because of the end of the Shibuya arc when Kenjaku released, all of those cursed spirits into Japan. It makes sense that, the waters would be infested with them as well. I mean, why not? And as soon as they're about to fall into the water, they just come out like hungry sharks or something. And this gives a platform for Kashimo to step on, to avoid being submerged. And as Hikari comes down, he just starts crushing them. And he's able to like grab onto like a flying fish cursed spirit so that he can stay elevated, and he kicks Kashimo like into the water. And as he does this, Kashimo gets submerged and starts discharging. And he says, I can't withstand his kicks without cursed energy. My cursed energy is flowing out. I have to suppress it. So this is because Kashimo needed to reinforce himself with cursed energy to not get completely destroyed by Hikari's kick. But at the same time, he got kicked into the water while he was still reinforcing himself, meaning his cursed energy was still active, so once he's submerged, he starts discharging. But then Hikari starts to get like woozy, He says, my breath, my eyes, and that smell, it can't be. And then he falls into the water. And it turns out that this was actually helping Kashimo, because Kashimo discharging under the water is causing electrolysis. And since it's salt water, this produces chlorine gas. And it says that chlorine was discovered in 1774. So the time isn't exactly lining up there, but Kashimo did have these abilities for, many years. Because, when we saw the flashback of him and Kenjaku, he was old when he made the deal. So we could just assume that he figured this out naturally. Kashimo was the first person to discover that electrocuting salt water produced chlorine gas. But then he says you can kill a user of reverse curse technique by destroying the brain in one blow or with toxins. And then we see a flashback of Urarame and Kenjaku from chapter 136. And this is because Choso hit Urarame with piercing blood, and Urarame was able to use reverse curse technique and regenerate from the wound. But since Choso had mixed poison with it, Urarame was still being affected by it, despite, healing the initial wound. And going further, Kashimo says, unlike simple body regeneration, addressing a toxin requires locating and removing the substance as well as a higher level of reverse curse technique. Apparently, he can't detoxify fast enough. And it seems like Hikari is pretty much done at this point, but no. He wakes up and hits Kashimo in the face, and Kashimo figures that, I guess despite his reverse curse technique being fully automatic, he targeted the toxin unconsciously and removed it. And considering that the explanation doesn't go any further here, I guess this is what happened. And Hikari is just even more beastly than we thought he was. Then Hikari realizes that he only has about 5 seconds left of his jackpot, and he figures that maybe he should wait until he gets above water to cast his domain again to avoid the risk of electrical shock and scalding water. But then he's like, nah, I'll just attack. And then he just starts beating down Kashimo while they're still both underwater. And he tells Kashimo to come on. And Kashimo's like, all right. And then he grabs Hikari's arm, and Hikari's shocked by this. And then suddenly there's a massive explosion underwater. And that's where the chapter ends. So your guess is as good as mine as to what's happening here. It's possible that Kashimo may have used his maximum technique, maybe. Now, it's also possible that he might not straight out say that it's his maximum technique. Kashimo doesn't really call his moves out like, a traditional character would. He kind of just does things, which I like. Maybe what he does here is a massive full discharge. All of his electrical curse energy is just discharged in one massive outburst, and this just causes a massive underwater explosion to where he's just trying to take out Hikari in one blow. I mean, this would be, his best bet, because he saw that when he gave Hikari a fatal wound, he just activated his domain expansion again and instantly hit the jackpot. So instead of just continuing to risk it, I suppose, just take him out in one shot. But it's also possible that, he runs the risk of taking himself out in the process. Now, does this mean that Hikari has lost? Maybe, but man, I don't think so. I'm really hoping that they both come out of this okay, this winds up being a draw as a result of whatever he's done, because I'd really like to see Kashimo and Hikari just, continue on into this arc and make it to the final round of the culling game, where I suspect everyone is going to face off against Sukuna. But let me know what you think about this chapter in the comments, guys, and if you liked it, please give it a like, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.